What happens when one of Hollywood's most enigmatic icons walks onto a daytime talk show set known for fiery debates and unpredictable twists? What happens when a single question, one tiny misunderstanding, ignites a moment so tense that even the studio lights seem to hold their breath? Before we dive into the storm that shook the room, make sure you subscribe to Talk Flair right now and like and comment, because this story is one you will not want to miss. It began on a Tuesday morning taping of The View, where the energy backstage already felt off. Producers whispered, stage managers shuffled nervously, and even the audience sensed something unusual was brewing. Angelina Jolie, known globally for her poise, calm authority, and an aura almost too luminous for daytime television, was the guest of honor to promote her upcoming humanitarian documentary. But as she stepped onto the stage, something else stepped with her, an unspoken tension that no one could quite identify yet. The applause thundered, echoing across the studio as Angelina offered her famous half-smile, that gentle yet distant expression she mastered long ago. She sat gracefully on the curved couch beside Whoopi Goldberg, who leaned forward, elbows on her knees, studying Angelina with the eyes of someone preparing for a conversation that might not go the way anyone expects. Angelina Jolie. Always a pleasure, Whoopi began, her tone friendly, but sharpness lingered beneath it, a blade wrapped in velvet. Thank you for having me, Angelina replied, smooth as glass. The opening questions were harmless enough. Talk of the film, her children, the global issues she was raising awareness for. But then the conversation shifted, subtly, almost imperceptibly, into territory loaded with emotion and history. Now, Whoopi said, sliding slightly forward, in your documentary, you talk a lot about responsibility and moral accountability. Some people might say that celebrities don't always practice what they preach. What do you say to that? Angelina kept her composure, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I think anyone with a platform has a duty to use it for something meaningful, she replied. But I also believe we all grow. We make mistakes. The point is what we learn, how we move forward, and how we use our experiences to help others. Whoopi's eyebrow lifted, and the air shifted. So when you say we, she asked slowly, are you including yourself? Or are you talking about everyone else? A soft murmur rippled through the audience. The tone had changed. There was something loaded in the way she asked it. Angelina inhaled calmly, almost imperceptibly. Of course I include myself, she said. I would never separate. But, Whoopi interjected, some people might think you are separating yourself. That you're speaking about people, not with people. That you're putting yourself above. The audience tightened, a collective muscle stiffening. A few heads leaned forward. Angelina blinked once, slowly. I'm not above anyone, she said. Whoopi's voice grew firmer. But don't you think your wording sounds like that? That maybe you're distancing. Whoopi, Angelina said, gently but clearly. Don't twist my words. The room froze. A single gasp cut through the silence. A few audience members covered their mouths. One woman in the second row whispered, "Oh my God," gripping her friend's arm. The host table stiffened. The other panelists exchanged wide-eyed looks, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. But the tension was no longer creeping. It was fully alive, pulsing, growing, vibrating between them like an electric storm ready to burst. Whoopi straightened, the slightest challenge glinting in her eyes, as if deciding whether to fire back or let the moment breathe. Twist your words, she repeated slowly, deliberately. Angelina, I'm asking you what people want to know. And I'm answering, Angelina replied, her voice steady, but the edge unmistakable. But responsibility is not superiority. I'm speaking about shared humanity. Nothing more. The camera zoomed in on Angelina's face, the calm mask beginning to crack just enough to show the heat beneath it. Not anger, but something deeper. Frustration. A lifetime of being misunderstood. Of speaking with intention only to have the meaning reshaped by someone else's narrative. Whoopi leaned back, crossing her arms now. All right, she said, almost as if giving permission. So explain it. Explain what you really meant. Angelina took a breath that carried weight. Years of interviews, critiques, assumptions. Her eyes flicked to the audience for a second, as though grounding herself in the sea of faces watching her, judging her, waiting for her next move. When I said we, she began, I meant all of us. All humans. All people with influence, big or small. We're all responsible for the world we shape. I'm not separating myself. I'm not preaching from a hilltop. I'm simply acknowledging that growth, real growth, takes accountability. Her voice softened but stayed firm. But what I won't do is let my words be turned into something I didn't say. The audience applauded, soft at first, unsure if it was appropriate to break the tension. Then louder still. A wave of support. Whoopi held her gaze, unblinking. A smile, small, unreadable, touched one corner of her mouth. Not quite approval. Not quite disagreement. Something in between. Something calculating. Well, Whoopi said finally, that's one way to put it. Angelina smiled politely, but her eyes told a different story. A line had been drawn, thin, sharp, and unmistakable. The other hosts jumped in, trying desperately to smooth the cracked atmosphere. I think what Angelina is saying, one of them chimed, is that we're all learning, all evolving. Exactly, Angelina said, seizing the moment to redirect. We're all part of the same world. None of us above, none below. But the undercurrent remained. The audience felt it. The hosts felt it. Angelina felt it. Something had been triggered, something not easily dismissed. Something that would only heat up from here. And deep down, beneath the poise and grace and media training, Angelina Jolie knew one thing. This conversation was far from over. Just as the show moved to a commercial break, the cameras caught one last silent exchange between Angelina and Whoopi. A look that said everything without a single word spoken. It was only the beginning. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the show slipped into commercial break, but the tension refused to dim with them. It clung to the air like static, thick humming, waiting. The second the countdown clock began for the break, the hosts rose from their seats. Stagehands rushed in. Makeup artists darted around them like hummingbirds, dusting, brushing, adjusting. But everyone's eyes, every single one of them, kept drifting back toward the two women at the center of the storm. Angelina remained seated for a moment, composed but undeniably pensive. She ran her fingers lightly across her knee, grounding herself. She wasn't angry. No, anger was too small, too simple. What she felt was something else. A pressure. A weight. A familiar tightening in her chest that only appeared when someone tried to pin a narrative onto her, like a label she never agreed to wear. Whoopi stayed near her seat as well, leaning back, arms crossed. She watched Angelina with a deep, unreadable expression, as though measuring each movement, each breath, each flicker of emotion. "Everything all right?" one of the producers whispered, crouching beside Angelina. She nodded politely, offering a diplomatic smile. "Everything's fine." But the producer wasn't convinced. No one was. As the countdown hit the final 10 seconds, the hosts moved back into place. The audience reassembled their energy, as if preparing for round 2. The air thickened. The cameras snapped back on. And the show resumed. This time, it didn't take long for the conversation to drift. No, be pulled back into the electric space it left behind. So, another host began, attempting to create a gentler entry into the topic. "Angelina, your documentary touches on how trauma can shape leadership. Can you tell us what drew you to that theme?" Angelina smiled softly, grateful for the pivot. "I think trauma shapes all of us. It changes the way we see the world, the way we connect, the way we protect others. I've worked with survivors for over 20 years. Their stories, they've taught me strength comes in many forms." The room softened with her words. The audience leaned in. For a moment, peace returned. But peace is fragile on a stage built for conflict. Whoopi cleared her throat. "And when you talk about trauma," she said, "are you referring to your own? Because some people say you bring your personal experiences into your advocacy a little too much." The room tightened again, instantly. Angelina turned to her fully this time, meeting her gaze head-on. "My experiences inform my empathy, not my ego." A quiet gasp rose from somewhere in the back row. "Right, but," Whoopi pushed, "don't you think there's a fine line between empathy and self-centered storytelling? Between raising awareness and making it about yourself?" Angelina's breath hitched almost imperceptibly, but she recovered in an instant. "I'm not here to make anything about myself," she replied, calm but unmistakably firm. "I'm here to bring attention to people whose voices aren't heard." "Still," Whoopi said, leaning forward, "some viewers think your words come across as..." "Who are these some viewers?" Angelina asked, her tone finally sharpening, the blade she kept sheathed now glinting under the studio lights. "You keep quoting people who aren't here. If you have something to say to me, say it directly." The audience gasped again, louder this time. Someone whispered, "She's had enough." Whoopi blinked slowly, surprised but not rattled. "All right," she said. "Fair enough. I'll say it directly." Time stopped. Even the cameras seemed to zoom in tighter, as if the machines themselves sensed the gravity of the moment. You come across, Whoopi said carefully, as someone who thinks her compassion gives her authority. You talk about humanity like you're outside of it, observing it, guiding it. That's the perception. Angelina held her gaze for a long, heavy moment. The room felt like it was sinking into silence. Then she exhaled. Whoopi, she said softly, too softly. The kind of softness that carried thunder beneath it. My compassion is not authority. My compassion is responsibility. And responsibility is not superiority. It's humanity. Her voice steadied, gathering strength as she continued. I've been in refugee camps where people have nothing. Nothing. And they still give you their trust, their stories, their hope. I carry those voices because they deserve to be heard. Not because I want praise. And certainly not because I think I'm above anyone. The audience burst into applause, erupting this time, filling the studio with a roar of support. Angelina didn't look away from Whoopi the entire time. Not once. Whoopi, however, remained still, listening, absorbing, her expression flickering with something that looked oddly close to respect, but mixed with something else. Something unresolved. As the applause settled, another host gently intervened. I think what Angelina's trying to say, she added, is that advocacy comes from lived experience, not superiority. Angelina nodded. Exactly. But Whoopi wasn't finished. So you're saying, she mused, that the perception is wrong? That you've never positioned yourself above anyone? Angelina's brows lifted, elegantly, confidently, unshaken. I'm saying the perception exists because people twist stories. They assign motives without understanding the person. And sometimes, she added, her gaze steady and unwavering, they hear things they want to hear, not the things being said. A murmur spread across the audience, curious, startled, knowing. Whoopi froze for a split second, recognizing the subtle but unmistakable subtext. Are you saying I'm twisting your words again? Whoopi asked, a faint challenge threading through her tone. Angelina didn't blink. I'm saying my words stand for themselves, she answered. And I'd appreciate if they were heard, not reshaped. The room went silent. So silent the hum of the overhead lights seemed loud. Then softly, surprisingly, Whoopi leaned back and let out a low, measured exhale. Well, she said, isn't this interesting? Angelina gave a small, poised smile. The other hosts looked like they were sitting at the center of a lightning storm, trying desperately not to get struck. As the second segment drew to a close, the director frantically signaled for another commercial break. And when the lights dimmed again and the audience softened their applause, one thing became clear. The storm was only intensifying, and the next round would be the one no one expected. The second commercial break ended with an uneasiness that settled over the studio like low-hanging fog. Even the audience, buzzing with whispered theories and exchanged glances, seemed unsure of whether to brace themselves or lean in closer. This wasn't just a celebrity interview anymore. It was something raw, something personal, something slipping out from behind the polished walls of media training and daytime TV diplomacy. Angelina returned to her seat with a calm that looked almost supernatural. Her posture upright, her breathing steady, her fingers laced lightly in her lap. But anyone watching closely, anyone reading the slight shifts in her expression, could sense the storm swirling beneath her serenity. Whoopi, meanwhile, settled into her chair with a guarded stillness. She wasn't angry. She wasn't flustered. No, her expression said something entirely different. This isn't over. The cameras blinked awake. The red light glowed. And the conversation resumed, slowly, at first, like the first rumble of thunder before the sky breaks open. So, another host began cautiously, we want to continue talking about your documentary, Angelina. There's a powerful moment where you say, we owe the world the best version of ourselves. Can you tell us what inspired that line? Angelina nodded, grateful for the chance to move the conversation back to meaningful ground. I think we all have a responsibility to show up fully, she explained, with honesty, compassion, and courage. Especially when we see suffering. Especially when. But, Whoopi interjected abruptly, don't you think that statement sounds a little idealistic? Almost like you're speaking from a place not everyone can relate to. The temperature in the room shifted again. A subtle collective wince rippled through the audience. Angelina turned toward her slowly. It's not idealism, she answered. It's accountability. But whose accountability? Whoopi pressed. Yours. Mine. Or the rest of the world. Angelina paused, searching Whoopi's expression for the intention behind the question. There was something there, something layered. Something not entirely about this interview. My accountability, Angelina said. Everyone's accountability. This isn't about superiority, Whoopi. It's about. Intentions don't always match impact, Whoopi said, her voice gaining weight. You may intend one thing, but people may hear another. Angelina inhaled slowly. True, but that's why clarity matters. And that's exactly what I'm asking for, Whoopi replied. Clarity. A tense silence stretched out like a live wire. The other hosts glanced nervously between them, unsure how to step into a sparring match that clearly didn't need more participants. Angelina broke the silence first. Whoopi, you've asked for clarity multiple times, she said carefully. But what you're really asking is for my intent to match a narrative you're presenting. Oh, Whoopi cocked her head. And what narrative is that? That I think I'm above others, Angelina replied. That my compassion is a performance. That my advocacy is self-serving. A ripple of shock swept through the room. Whoopi's brows lifted. I never said that. No, Angelina said, her voice low, steady, unshakable. But you're implying it. The audience drew a collective breath, sharp, startled, electric. Whoopi leaned in. Angelina, are you suggesting I'm trying to undermine you? Angelina didn't blink. I'm suggesting you're misinterpreting me intentionally. Or at the very least forcefully. The studio reacted like a wave crashing. Gasps, whispers, scattered applause from those who couldn't contain themselves. One of the co-hosts stepped in quickly, desperate to diffuse the explosive energy. Ladies, I think what we're trying to explore here. No, Whoopi said, raising a hand slightly, eyes still locked on Angelina. Let her speak. Angelina held her gaze, unwavering. There was no anger in her expression, only truth. And truth, when delivered calmly, can strike harder than rage ever could. I've spent years, working with people whose lives depend on being heard accurately, Angelina said softly. Survivors of war, victims of violence, refugees with stories more painful than anything we could comprehend sitting here. The audience quieted into profound stillness. And the one thing they fear, Angelina continued, is having their voices twisted, diminished, misunderstood. So I've learned to speak carefully, intentionally, clearly. She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady as a heartbeat. That's why I said earlier, don't twist my words. The room pulsed with silent electricity. Whoopi took a breath that sounded heavier than anything she'd said so far. She wasn't smiling now. Not even a hint. Her posture straightened. Her expression sharpened. You think I'm twisting your words to create drama? Whoopi asked. Angelina's voice softened even further, the calm before a final collision. I think you're shaping my meaning into something I didn't say. And I won't let that stand, not today, not ever. The audience erupted, first in gasps, then in scattered applause, then in a louder wave of clapping that forced the director to cut to a wide shot. But the tension remained. Unbroken. Unshakable. Whoopi looked down briefly, exhaling through her nose. When she lifted her gaze again, something had changed. Something subtle. Something dangerous. So what do you want to do then, Angelina? She asked quietly. Correct me on national television? Angelina raised her chin. If necessary. The studio broke. Some laughing nervously, some audibly gasping, some clapping like they were witnessing a courtroom verdict. Whoopi didn't flinch. And you think you're justified in that? I think truth is justified, Angelina said. Another explosion of audience reaction. For the first time since the interview began, Whoopi's expression shifted, just a flicker. Not humiliation. Not anger. Something deeper. A realization. A recognition that this moment was no longer a debate. It was a reckoning. One of the hosts, looking like she might faint from the pressure of the moment, jumped in. We need to move on to the next segment. But it was too late. The moment had already carved itself into the air like a scar. As the director signaled frantically for another break, and the lights dimmed once more, Angelina and Whoopi shared one final glance. A silent, electrifying acknowledgement of the line that had been crossed. This wasn't just a heated interview anymore. It was a confrontation neither of them would walk away from unchanged. Here is part 4, around 1,000 words. The dramatic conclusion with aftermath plus audience/media fallout plus final CTA for talk flair. Part 4. The final segment returned with a studio so charged, so tense, that even the applause sign blinked hesitantly, as if afraid to command anything from the stunned audience. Everyone sat forward. Everyone breathed shallowly. Everyone knew they were witnessing something that would explode far beyond the walls of the studio. Angelina Jolie sat centered, calm but undeniably resolute. Her eyes no longer darted politely among the hosts. Her gaze was direct, anchored, unshakable. She had crossed the line from guest to force, an energy the cameras recognized instantly, zooming in as though drawn by gravity. Whoopi Goldberg settled in her chair with a stillness that betrayed nothing. No irritation, no defensiveness, just readiness, like a storm cloud holding itself back from releasing thunder. The final segment was supposed to be lighthearted. A fundraising initiative, a fan question, a feel-good wrap-up. But there was no returning to lighthearted. The energy in the room had transformed into something else entirely, a battlefield of unspoken truths and simmering tension. The host at the far end attempted to usher in a softer tone. Angelina, she began, her voice trembling slightly. Before we wrap, we want to ask, what do you hope people take away from your documentary? Angelina offered a gentle nod. But her answer did not shy away, did not shift the atmosphere, did not dilute the truth that had dominated the conversation. I hope, she said, people walk away understanding that empathy requires accuracy. It requires listening, not assuming. It requires presence, real presence. Whoopi's eyes narrowed only slightly. Angelina continued, her tone steady but carrying an unmistakable undercurrent of meaning. And when someone speaks from their heart, the world doesn't need to twist their intentions into something sensational. We should listen to their truth, not rewrite it. A collective murmur rippled through the studio like a wave pulling back before a crash. Whoopi leaned in, elbows on her knees. You still talking about the documentary? Or about earlier? The audience gasped. Someone in the front row whispered, Here we go again. Angelina didn't flinch. Both, she replied. The single word hit like a spark in a room full of gasoline. Another host jumped in, her voice attempting to smooth the crackling tension. Well, I think what Angelina is saying. But Whoopi lifted a hand. No, let her finish. Angelina met her eyes with absolute calm. I speak carefully because words matter, especially when you're discussing people who trust you with their stories. And misunderstandings, especially intentional ones, can harm more than the speaker. The silence grew thick enough to feel. Whoopi exhaled slowly, as though weighing whether to respond. But the question wasn't whether she could. Oh, she could. It was whether this moment needed escalation or closure. I wasn't trying to harm you, Whoopi said finally, her tone measured. I know, Angelina said, her voice softening only slightly. But intent isn't everything. Impact matters too. The line struck deep. So deep the audience reacted like they'd been hit by the same revelation. A ripple of applause broke out, not loud, but unanimous. Something shifted between them then. Not forgiveness, not agreement, but clarity. Fair enough, Whoopi said at last, leaning back in her chair. You said your piece. Angelina nodded once, not smug, not triumphant, just steady. The showrunner looked relieved, signaling the hosts to move forward with the final fan question. But the moment had already branded itself into the history of the show. Everyone knew nobody watching from home would remember the fan question. They'd remember this. A video from a fan played on the screen. Someone asking Angelina about how she balances motherhood, humanitarian work, and acting. Normally the audience would coo, smile, react. But their attention was still tethered to the emotional fallout simmering between Angelina and Whoopi. Angelina answered gracefully, her voice smooth again, but carrying that new firmness, the kind that comes from standing one's ground. My children keep me grounded, she said. The work keeps me human. Both teach me to stay present. The audience applauded, this time with warmth, admiration, connection. They weren't just seeing a celebrity. They were seeing a woman unafraid to defend her integrity. But the moment they had all been waiting for came when the show wrapped. The iconic closing line, "Thank you for watching The View," fell flat beneath the weight of everything that had transpired. The applause felt different now. Not routine. Not scripted. Real. Raw. Charged. As the cameras powered down and the red light faded, a strange silence settled. A silence filled with the aftermath no one wanted to speak aloud. Angelina rose gracefully from her seat. Whoopi stood too. For a moment, one long, suspended second, they faced each other. Not enemies. Not rivals. But two powerful women who had collided in a way neither anticipated. Angelina extended her hand. Whoopi looked at it, her face unreadable. Then slowly she took it. A flash of cameras exploded from the edges of the stage as photographers captured the moment. Behind them, whispers filled the studio. "Did you see? She shut her down. This is going viral." They weren't holding back. The show staff swarmed the stage, escorting Angelina toward the exit. But as she walked, people approached her quietly. Crew members, audience members, a few hosts offering supportive nods, subtle smiles, whispered thank yous. Angelina kept her composure, but her eyes softened, gratitude flickered there. Not for the confrontation, but for being heard. Outside the studio, it was already happening. Tweets, headlines, clips, reactions. The internet was igniting like dry brush in summer heat. Angelina Jolie checks Whoopi Goldberg on live TV. "Don't twist my words," the moment that shocked the view. Fans call Jolie's response iconic in heated exchange. Thousands of comments flooded in within minutes. She handled that with grace. Whoopi pushed too far. Angelina didn't let them spin her narrative. This is the most intense interview The View has had in years. And the debate spread like wildfire through every corner of social media. Some viewers defended Whoopi. Others praised Angelina. Many simply couldn't believe what they'd witnessed. But the reaction that mattered most was the one written across Angelina's face as she stepped into her car. A quiet satisfaction. Not victory, no. Something purer. She had defended her truth. Without anger. Without apology. Without compromise. And people had heard her. As the car door closed, the last words of the day echoed in her mind. Words matter. Intent matters. Impact matters. For everyone watching, that moment would replay again and again. An iconic clash between two powerful voices, a confrontation that peeled away the polish of daytime television and exposed something startlingly real. And for you, watching right now, reliving this moment through the lens of pure cinematic storytelling, there's only one question that remains. Whose side are you on? Angelina's? Whoopi's? Or do you think both were right in their own way? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Talk Flair for more explosive, emotional, and unforgettable celebrity stories. Stories that pull you inside the moment and keep you right on the edge of the drama.